Welcome to Slash Forward. Today we finish the Friday the 13th series with the 2009 remake, a film with a title card so brief I've already overshot it. Damn it! Let's get to it. This movie opens with a brief reimagining of the ending of the first movie, with Pamela Voorhees meting out justice for Jason. Since they want to explain everything, she talks about why she's doing what she's doing as she's doing it.
You should have been watching him every minute!
Revealing this all would have been avoided if she just adjusted her unreasonable expectations. We then flash forward to more modern times, where a group of teens are backpacking through the woods, following a secondhand map to a weed stash that is apparently known about and yet still exists. After sharing an unnecessary amount of dialogue that is dripping with phrases that sound like what adults think teens talk like, they decide to set up camp for the night. Here the group gets some classic backstory revelation of the legend of Camp Crystal Lake that, at this point, we need not review. The mature couple goes off to have a discussion about real-life problems, while Wade, the fifth wheel, realizes they're very close to their intended objective and goes off in search of it, giving the Randy couple time to get their groove on in what appears to be the only tent. Come on, guys. Wade manages to achieve success while almost immediately counteracting it with a pretty significant failure, while Mike and Whitney find the old camp and go urbexing. Among the garbage, Mike makes an important observation about Jason's locket.
Hey, it looks like you.
Back at camp, a noise interrupts the sex, as though they were being discreet, and Ricky goes out to explore its source, Sans boner. He finds Wade and runs back to camp, but finds difficulties along the way. He's helpless to do more than observe as Amanda adds a creative and brutal sleeping bag kill to the board. Back at the cabin, the couple finds evidence of an active occupant. Mike thinks he sees something interesting and reaches into a dirty hole. Yeah, that was ill-advised. He then manages to never quite move enough while getting stabbed through the floor, and is dragged under the floorboards by Jason. Whitney runs back to find the camp carnage, and only has a few moments before Jason arrives to wrap up the evening festivities. 6 weeks later, we're introduced to a new group of teens heading off for fun at the lake. Inside the local gas station, Trent meets and has a bro-off with Clay, Whitney's brother.
You okay, bro?
I'm not your bro.
Who hits Trent with a sick sign burn on his way out. Clay gets into his second dick measuring contest with the local sheriff, who reveals that after a short investigation and due to a lack of evidence, Clay is the only one still out looking for the lost teens. The group makes it to the cabin, which is much higher rent than we're used to in the series, and they try to relax and unwind while Trent fusses about like a mother hen. Clay gets the cold shoulder from the locals, who cryptically reference that outsiders need to learn what areas to stay away from, but don't give any more details that might be helpful. Donnie confirms he's never seen Whitney, but then takes the opportunity to ask Clay if he wants to buy some weed he just found, so you know what that means. Clay finds his way back to familiar faces, and sympathetic Jenna invites her boyfriend's arch nemesis into the house. She makes the mistake of getting between two alphas, and then chooses to go with Clay to help him in his search. While this is happening, Donnie has to cash out for the weed he stole, and in the process, Jason acquires a necessary piece of equipment. Oh yeah, soak it in. Nolan and Chelsea are out to gas up the boat, but also opt to test its water fastness with some topless water skiing. Having spent his life at a summer camp with no company, this Jason has perfected all camp activities, which he demonstrates by placing an arrow into the back of Nolan's head. This causes Nolan to drift the boat into Chelsea's face. Jason sends her into a panic, and she swims off to what appears to be the only dock on the lake. Jason arrives shortly after and takes the easy kill. Clay and Jenna find and explore the camp cabins, and observe Jason returning from his fishing trip on their way out. They manage to hide, but Clay left out his satchel in the open. Jason reveals that he's Kevin McAllister at the site, and does a little bush beating to flush out the vermin. Confident in his solitude, he heads home. Clay and Jenna take the smart choice and run, tripping an alarm on the way out that reveals Jason's underground labyrinth, and shows that Whitney has been kept alive all these weeks for purposes of nostalgia. Back at the house, the party's getting lit, with predictable results. The destroyed heirloom sends Trent into a chest-beating mode, both turning on Bree and driving Chewie to acquire some tools so he can fix the chair, with predictable and brutal results. Jenna and Clay bust in frantically right as Lawrence is about to frantically bust one out. They need to gather the gang, but Trent and Bree are in the bedroom having a hilarious conversation.
The tits are so juicy, dude.
And filming the worst amateur porn ever. Unless you enjoy poorly lit male torsos. The lights go out and they finally group up, but Lawrence almost immediately splits off to find his buddy. This accomplishes little more than to give them a general idea of where Jason is, while he lets Lawrence scream for an unnervingly long time. Seeing that they're not coming to save him, Jason goes ahead and finishes the job. Trent then runs upstairs to get the family gun in what must be a secret room where he doesn't see or hear Bree pounding around. She has a brief standoff with a window before we get confirmation that Jason's in the house, and then she gets racked. The police show up but don't accomplish much other than to confirm Jason is now outside. Trent gets jumpy and starts shooting at everything. Oh Calm down!
Bree's dead. He killed Bree.
You don't know that. With the squad car rendered useless, they split off and run into the woods. Trent loses his gun in a puddle and eventually finds the road. Unfortunately, his distrust of the proletariat delays him too long, and Jason catches up. Back at camp, Clay and Jenna hear Whitney screaming and manage to find their way to her among the gently used camping equipment. On their way out, in an unceremonious twist, Jenna brings up the rear and is run through with a machete. They scuffle with Jason briefly and manage to run off in the rain, winding up back at the barn. Clay searches the barn for usable weapons so as to engage Jason in armed combat, which ends with Clay taking quite a bit of damage. Luckily, Whitney is savvy enough to pull the mommy bit before Jason can pulp him up, allowing them to wrap a chain around his neck and start pulling. The chipper does the rest of the work, with Whitney sealing the deal. In the end, they roll him into a lake with some of his most intimate possessions, ensuring an eventual spiritual rebirth, which happens to happen well ahead of the sequel. And that was the Friday the 13th remake, and the end of the series for now. It's been 10 years since we've had a Jason movie, and thanks to rights issues and ongoing legal battles, it's anyone's guess when we might get another. So it's gonna have to do for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.